The flowers are finally blooming and the days are getting longer. Spring is here, and with it come millions of migrating birds heading north from their winter homes in the tropics. According to the National Wildlife Federation, spring migration spans from February to May. The length of time it takes for a bird to migrate depends on their breeding location and species. Around this time each year, about 350 varieties fly hundreds of miles to reach their breeding grounds located in the U.S. and Canada. But why do they travel so far? And if the tropics are so nice, why leave?
Birds migrate mainly to take advantage of food resources that are available in different places at different times of the year. So, example, far north in the Arctic, there's this big flush of insects in spring that's great for, protein to raise baby birds on, but you wouldn't necessarily want to stay there year round because in winter there's nothing to eat. So by making these long distance movements, it helps birds take advantage of pulses and resources that become available in different areas at different times of year.
That's science writer Rebecca Heisman, author of Flight Paths: How a Passionate and Quirky Group of Pioneering Scientists Solved the Mystery of Bird Migration. Heisman has been drawn to the topic since she was a teen. Like millions before her, she pondered the same questions. How do birds know when to fly and where to go? How can such tiny creatures like hummingbirds that are the size of a thumb fly hundreds of miles? Today we know the answers thanks to modern technology. One part of the puzzle is using tracking devices to get a better sense of when and where these birds fly.
It goes all the way back to bird banding, which has its origins way back in the beginning of the 20th century when people first started putting these little metal, sort of like metal bracelets around birds' ankles that don't hurt them at all, that they have individual numbers on them so that that bird can be identified if it's captured again. And people still do this, and this is a great source of long-term data.
To put these trackers on, migrating birds are caught in mist nets, lengths of fine nylon mesh strung like volleyball nets between two poles. Researchers carefully extract the caught birds and attach a numbered band to its leg. And because birds must bulk up in preparation for the long journey, researchers note down each bird's weight and wingspan before releasing them back into the wild.
There's a number of different types of little sort of tracking backpacks that we can put on birds that record their location. And we also have now more passive methods of studying bird migration. You can analyze the ratios of rare hydrogen isotopes in bird feathers to get an idea of where they were when they grew those feathers. And people are also working on doing genetic sequencing so that you can collect a feather or a drop of blood and sequence the DNA in it to figure out which breeding population a migrating bird might have come from.
Here's another question you might be asking. If millions of birds are migrating right now, how come we don't see them in the sky, other than the occasional flock of geese flying overhead? Heisman says that's because many species, especially songbirds, migrate at night.
I think the weather is often more favorable and there's fewer predators out, so just a safer, easier time to make progress. A lot of songbirds that migrate at night give really unique calls while they're migrating at night that they don't use at other times. And a while back, some folks did a study with warblers, which is a small group of small, colorful songbirds that breed in North America and migrate. And they found that warblers that followed similar migratory routes had more similar nocturnal flight calls, regardless of how closely related they are. And so they think that they use these flight calls to kind of find other birds who are heading to the same place and stick together, which is interesting.
But how do birds know where to go, especially when it's dark?
Birds actually have a number of different ways of navigating during migration. There were some famous experiments done quite a while ago where they put birds under planetariums so that they could rotate the sky that they were seeing to prove that they were orienting themselves using the stars at night. They can also use the position of the sun in the sky. Some birds are known to use visual landmarks on the ground underneath. And birds also can actually sense the Earth's magnetic field and use that as a compass to navigate by.
While it's hard to see birds at night, there are still plenty to watch during the day. Heisman notes that during the pandemic, millions of people got into birdwatching.
Part of it was we were all stuck in our homes without anything to do but poke around in our backyard and walk around our neighborhood. So we started noticing more about what was going on. And part of it was that with less traffic and stuff out there, birds were more active and singing more and more visible. So I think a lot of people started noticing birds for the first time who maybe hadn't before.
But these fascinating animals are in trouble. A recent study shows that there are 3 billion fewer birds in North America than there were in the 1970s. That's a 30% decrease in the continent's bird population. Researchers suspect that climate change is one culprit.
It's really clear from long-term bird banding records that the timing of bird migration is changing. Spring migration is getting earlier and earlier over time. It's hard to do the math to sort of prove that that's related to climate change, but that seems like a pretty obvious conclusion to draw. And the question is whether birds can shift the timing of their migration fast enough to keep up with the changing climate as the arrival of spring and that spring boom and insects and everything also becomes earlier and earlier.
Take, for example, the flush of insects that hatch in the Arctic every spring. Because temperatures have grown warmer over the years, these insects are hatching earlier. By the time migrating birds arrive at their feeding grounds, the insects have dispersed or died already. Without their usual feast to revive them after a long journey, many of these famished and exhausted birds die soon after arrival. On top of climate change, there's another big factor feeding into bird deaths.
The number one factor right now, they think, is not climate change, not yet, although that's probably going to be more of a factor as time goes on, but just habitat loss, as well as other factors like collisions with buildings and predation by outdoor cats and stuff like that. So yeah, there's a lot of folks working on this, trying to collect better data on where these different populations go and when, so that we can figure out exactly where the problems are and what are the crucial pieces of habitat that we need to protect and make sure that they have the resources that they need to complete these journeys.
So, how can people help these migrating birds? Heisman says there are several simple ways in which the public can make a difference.
Keep your cats inside. A lot of people don't want to hear that one, but there's really good evidence that outdoor cats kill huge numbers of songbirds every year. You can plant more native plants in your yard and reduce your use of pesticides to improve habitat for birds. There's a lot of products you can buy, little stickers and stuff that you can put on your windows to stop birds from colliding with them, which is another big source of bird mortalities.
On the subject of bird feeders, they don't enhance bird survival. They're more for humans to watch and enjoy our feathered friends. In fact, Heisman says it's important to clean bird feeders every week or two because they can quickly become a source of disease transmission. While tips like these might help move the needle, ultimately researchers aren't sure why birds are dying off so quickly. More data is needed to get a better understanding of the problem as a whole. Bird enthusiasts can help by keeping track of which birds visit their backyard during the beginning of migration season. Cornell Lab's Great Backyard Bird Count takes place every February, and bird watchers everywhere can participate. For more information, go to birdcount.org or visit our website at viewpointsradio.org. You'll also learn more about our guest, Rebecca Heisman, as well as all of our past guests. Heisman's book, Flight Paths, is available now online and in select bookstores. This segment was written and produced by Polly Hansen. Our executive producer is Amira Zaveri. I'm Gary Price. Coming up on Viewpoints.
As one teacher told me, teaching is the only profession she could think of where you could have 2 advanced degrees and still make less than $50K.
The unsustainable landscape of teaching in America. Then,
not only, what videos you watch, but how long you watch them, when you click on them, all of that can reveal information about you.
Why you should care about whether you're being tracked online. I'm Marty Peterson.
And I'm Gary Price. These stories in depth on your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.
And that's Viewpoints for this week. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to learn more about upcoming shows and find a library of past programs on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. Plus, you'll always find previous segments and more information about our guests at viewpointsradio.org. Join us again next week for another edition of Viewpoints.